The Guiding Star, the story of Isaac Newton. It was the late 17th century. The world was still cloaked in shadows. Not just due to the absence of electricity, but from a lack of scientific understanding. Superstition, fear, and ignorance ruled people's minds. In a Europe full of unanswered questions, a small flicker of light was born. One that would one day shine brighter than anyone could have imagined. On January 4, 1643, in the quiet village of Woolsthorpe by Colsterworth in Lincolnshire, England, a fragile baby was born. His mother named him Isaac Newton. He was so weak at birth that people believed he wouldn't survive the night. But fate had a different plan. A lonely childhood and a curious mind. Isaac's childhood was steeped in loneliness. His father died just months before he was born. At the age of 3, his mother remarried and left him in the care of his grandparents. He grew up isolated, misunderstood, and often lost in his thoughts. While other children played, Isaac observed everything. He watched ants crawl along walls, studied the patterns of falling leaves, and listened intently to the sound of wind through the trees. His world wasn't filled with toys or friends, but with questions. Why does the apple fall? Why do stars shine? Why does the wind blow? Isaac was not like other children. He was born with the mind of a seeker, a scientist. In the making, education, and early struggles. His mother once tried to pull him out of school to make him a farmer. But Newton had no interest in farming. Luckily, his school principal convinced her that Isaac had a rare mind and must study further. He returned to school and later earned admission to Trinity College, Cambridge. At Cambridge, Newton studied mathematics, philosophy, and science. But he didn't simply accept what was taught. He questioned everything. He read the works of Galileo, Kepler, and Descartes, but felt there was still something missing. The Black Plague and a brilliant solitude. In 1665, the Black Plague swept across England, killing thousands. Cambridge University shut down. Newton returned home to Woolsthorpe. It was in these 2 years of isolation that the foundations of modern science were born. Newton called it his annus mirabilis, his year of wonders. During this time, Newton developed the fundamentals of calculus, explored optics and discovered the composition of white light, laid down the groundwork for the law of universal gravitation. It was in this same period that the legendary apple fell. One day, while sitting in his garden, Newton saw an apple drop from a tree. But unlike others, he didn't just watch. He wondered, why does the apple fall straight down? Why not sideways? Or upwards? This question led him to propose something extraordinary, that a force pulls objects toward the earth. He called this force gravity. The theory of gravitation. Newton began to imagine that the same force pulling the apple to the ground might also be pulling the moon toward Earth. What if gravity wasn't limited to Earth? What if it was a universal law, stretching across the cosmos? With extraordinary mathematical calculations, Newton developed the concept of universal gravitation. He suggested that every object in the universe attracts every other object with a force directly proportional to their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. This idea changed the way we understand the universe, the light spectrum. But Newton's curiosity didn't stop with gravity. He was fascinated by light. Until then, people believed white light was pure. But Newton's experiments proved otherwise. He passed white light through a prism and observed it split into 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. He concluded that white light was a mixture of all these colors, a revolutionary discovery. With this, Newton founded optics as a field of science. He even built the world's first reflecting telescope, which allowed scientists to see clearer images of distant planets and stars, the masterpiece, Principia Mathematica. In 1687, after years of work and hesitation, Newton finally published his masterpiece, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. In this book, He outlined the three laws of motion. Every object stays at rest or moves in a straight line. Unless acted upon by a force, force equals mass times acceleration, F equals ma. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. These laws formed the foundation of classical mechanics and remained unchallenged centuries. Principia was more than a book. It was a roadmap to the mechanics of the universe, a guide for every scientist who came after. Conflict and pride. Despite his brilliance, Newton was not without flaws. He was proud, secretive, and sensitive to criticism. One of the biggest controversies in his life was the conflict with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, a German mathematician who independently developed calculus. Newton and his followers accused Leibniz of plagiarism, sparking a bitter feud that lasted for years. Newton's pride sometimes isolated him from other scientists. He didn't easily share credit and often worked alone, but no matter the conflicts, his genius was undeniable. From scientist to national hero in his later years, Newton gained immense recognition. In 1705, Queen Anne knighted him, making him Sir Isaac Newton. He became the president of the Royal Society and the master of the Royal Mint, where he reformed England's coinage system. He never married and had few close relationships, but he remained dedicated to science and public service until the end of his life. Final reflections. On March 20, 1727, Newton passed away at the age of 84. He was buried with great honor at Westminster Abbey, a resting place reserved for the most revered figures in British history. Before his death, Newton humbly wrote, "I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." Even after revolutionizing physics, mathematics, and astronomy, Newton saw himself as a mere explorer, standing at the shore of the vast unknown. Legacy, a light that never dies. Isaac Newton's life was more than the story of a scientist. It was the story of a mind that refused to accept darkness. He taught humanity to ask questions, to seek answers, and to trust reason over superstition. He was once a lonely boy watching falling apples and crawling ants, but through sheer thought, curiosity, and unshakable determination, he became a guiding star, a beacon for all of science. Even today, centuries later, every student of physics begins with his laws. Every astronomer looks at the cosmos through a lens he helped polish. Every thinker walks in the light he helped ignite. Isaac Newton did not just study the universe, he helped us understand it.